briefly as possible. I understand that the temptation is to keep going, especially for judicial candidates. I get it. But you have a minute, and I will be the heavy and call time or thank you or something. Additionally, we have a little bit more time pressure in this department, Department 24, because we have 3 candidates. So I'm asking the panelists to make sure your questions are highly focused, and of course the candidates to give highly focused responses. Unfortunately, that's the form that we're dealing with, but a lot of information in a short amount of time. So I'd like to welcome Jim Crockett, Joe Hardy Jr., and Tony Leiker. So, as a reminder, I'm going to ask that you each take about a minute and 30 seconds. Again, this is like the perfect job for an accountant to keep track of the time, to introduce yourselves, and then we'll move on down the line and we'll go from there. So I'll just start at the end with Mr. Leiker.
I'm Attorney Tony Leiker, running in Department 24, Judge Bixler's old seat. I've been a 20-year attorney here in Las Vegas. I think I'm the only candidate that's a former prosecutor, and I'd appreciate your vote.
I like those short introductions.
Joe Hardy Jr., thank you first of all for having me here. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here this afternoon. I appreciate everyone's time. I am a native Nevada, grew up in Boulder City. I've worked at several law firms, first being a local firm, then a regional, and now a national firm. Becoming a judge is something I've wanted to do ever since I externed for Judge Lloyd George here in federal court. It was more of a question of timing and gaining the requisite experience to run. And so I'm here today, and thanks again for your time.
Hello, I'm Jim Crockett. I also want to thank you for the chance to speak with you. I'm not a native Nevadan, but my family moved here when I was 3 years old, so I've been here for a very long time. I'm a product of the public school system, and then I went away to college in Los Angeles and Sacramento to go to law school. I graduated in 1974 and took and passed the bar, and ever since 1974, I've been self-employed. In 1979, I formed a partnership with Richard Myers under the name Crockett and Myers, and we were an active practicing firm up till the present, but Rich retired in 2008. I spent my career representing working class men and women and their families exclusively. That is how I devoted my career as a trial lawyer to representing people who were injured or victims of wrongdoing. I'm board certified as a civil trial advocate. That means that I've had considerable courtroom experience and that I've received the recommendation not only of the judges I've tried cases in front of, but opposing counsel that I tried cases against in order to make me eligible to sit for the day-long exam and then receive board certification. I have been board certified since 1983, and I continue to recertify every 5 years. I think that I have really excellent qualifications for this position, and I would like very much to be a district court judge. Thank you.
And my job is to play the heavy. Okay, we are welcoming Len Connell. This is a floating panel. So people are floating in and out. It's a long afternoon, so that's to be expected. And we should all be grateful for their participation and their questions. And as a reminder, what I'm asking the panelists to do is if you take less than 30 seconds to ask your question, and if you, especially with 3 candidates, if you can direct your questions, if you want one person to start or you want all of them to answer, I ask that you please direct who you want to start with, and if you don't want to start with, then by default we'll start with Tony and work our way down, just for the sake of keeping some kind of order. Okay, Len, you're first up if you're ready.
Okay, this is directed at all 3 of the honorable candidates. Would you take into account the status of someone appearing before you, whether or not they were a veteran, making decisions regarding their life, health, wealth, or other conditions?
Well, as a judge, we can't discuss, how we would rule in a specific case, but all I can tell you is my dad was a member of the Army. He was in the U.S. Army, and a lot of my uncles were in the armed services. So, I was always raised to believe that, that's very, very admirable. I mean, they're risking their lives, and so it's something very important. So I think that, I wouldn't be able to help but, consider that.
Thank you. As Mr. Liker said, we can't comment on a specific case, but we can take into account all the facts and circumstances of everyone who comes before us, whether they be a veteran or under any other circumstance. Particularly our veterans, they've served our country honorably. We're here because of them. We owe them a deep debt of gratitude and need to take that into consideration.
Actually, we have a Veterans Court program in our S-179. And if a veteran has been honorably discharged and either has PTSD diagnosed traumatic brain injury or has issues with substance abuse and meets certain criterion, a judge is supposed to give special consideration to the veteran because of their distinguished veteran status. Not just the fact that they serve, but that they serve with honor and that they have issues that need to be addressed. You can't treat addiction or traumatic brain injury or PTSD by punishing it. It doesn't work. And so the Veterans Court has become a very powerful adjunct to our civil justice system. Community court level, justice court level, and district court level.
Okay, thank you. I'll also remind, while we have a phone ringing off the hook, the gumbo's really good here, so maybe that's what it is. But if you can make sure your phones are silenced. We're working on the technical issues, so we're not ignoring it, but I can't apologize. It's one of our sponsors, and they got to pay their bills. Okay, next up will be, I guess, Byron, who stepped out. How about we'll go with Forrest?
Yeah, starting with Tony, can each one of you tell me what political party you belong to?
I don't believe you're allowed to do that as the judicial counsel.
Yes, you are. If the question is addressed to you, you can respond. You just can't put it in your resume and tell people. But if you're asked, you're supposed to respond.
Well, let's put it this way. My dad was a Goodyear tire rubber worker for 30 years. He's totally pro-union all the way, pro-Democrat all the way. And I was raised that way. So that answers your question.
I'm a registered Republican.
I'm a registered Democrat.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Jason?
Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us today on the
Hey,
panel.
can I ask a question? I mean, normally when we do these kind of forums, like if I go first and the next one goes first and the next one, I'm just saying in all fairness, if I got to go first every time, it's a little bit of a disadvantage to me.
That is true.
Don't worry, Tony, I'll take care of you on this one, okay?
Okay.
We'll try to rotate it around, point well taken.
Okay.
I want them to actually direct the panelists to say, Mr. Crockett, answer, and then there's three of you, so it makes it a little more awkward, so I accept that.
I got
I'm
you.
not trying to be-
And this time we're going to start with Mr. Hardy Jr.
Okay.
But the question is for all three of you, it's the exact same question. I know with respect to your professional life, you put a lot into it, you devote a lot of time to helping people out, working with the community because of your profession. But outside of your profession, what do you do within the community to help the community?
Several different things. I have been a volunteer with the Boy Scouts of America 5 years. Up until recently, I was a Webelos Den leader, assistant scout master, and cub master. I served as an arbitrator with the Better Business Bureau. I am the chapter chair of the Las Vegas chapter of the J. Reuben Clark Law Society. I do a lot of pro bono work for those who are in unfortunate circumstances.
Thank you.
I too have done pro bono work over the last 40 years. It'll be 40 years in October. But the primary thing I've done is actually so closely linked to the law practice that it's probably not considered separate. I've been a lecturer at the thing called People's Law School, which is a free law school thing we put on for about a week at a time, once a year, just to give the lay public education about their basic rights as landlord, tenant, and things like that.
Thank you, sir.
I'm kind of a sports nut, but besides my free time, I'm a Christian, so I spend a lot of time helping my church out, like the homeless feeds, various things they have, and that's what I do with my spare time. And I've done pro bono work myself as well. And my 20 years of practicing law in Vegas.
Thank you.
Okay, great. We're still working on the phone issue. I see everyone scurrying around the
Somebody's cell
restaurant.
phone sitting on the bar downstairs.
You would think we'd pick up, but
We got a
anyway.
gun?
We all do.
All these veterans, nobody brought a 50 cal to take care of that phone, right? Not in one in the room, huh?
Glock 17, baby.
It's okay. Well, we all have to play through on different things. I can tell you stories about when we were on the floor of the State Assembly about distractions. But in any event, hopefully everyone can just work through it and we'll go from there. Angie.
Nice. My question has to do with judicial activism and jury nullification in regards to specifically, let's take a look at one thing that happened recently. When the government was shut down, they shut down the memorials in DC, and they have something called freedom flights where these veterans are given the opportunity to get on a plane with a whole bunch of other veterans for either, the Vietnam War, the World War II, and basically go see their memorials. Well, during the government shutdown, these memorials were closed. So the veterans, even though they did open them up for a little bit, they ended up actually closing them after a few days. These veterans, what they ended up doing was breaking into the memorials, taking the barricades and things, and like going with their wheelchairs, their little segways and stuff, and removing them and taking them to the White House. So in a situation where you're a judge in this situation and somebody's been charged with trespassing and destruction of government property, how would you view trying these individuals?
Okay. Do you want someone to start specifically, or do you want me to direct it?
Mr. Crockett can start.
Okay, and then we'll go to Tony and then to...
I'm not going to duck your question by saying that we're not supposed to give opinions on how we would handle particular cases, although that is true. But what I can tell you is that one of the things that I've learned over the last 40 years is that things are always more complex than they seem to be when we first learn about them. And whether you're talking to your client who's presenting their situation for the very first time and you're hearing one side of what happened, or you're talking to a judge trying to explain why you disagree with your opposing counsel, there's always more at stake. I can see some issues here. I think that I can't imagine anything more of a hot potato than for a judge deciding a case against some wheelchair-bound veterans who are trying to demonstrate their civil disobedience of something going on, and I'm a big fan of Henry David Thoreau. But I also would have due respect for the fact that property is being damaged, it's being defiled, a memorial. A national monument is being defiled by people who are upset about the way things are going on.
Not the memorial, just the barricades.
Just the barricades. Nevertheless, in defiance of efforts to protect the memorials and the monuments from unsupervised, unattended access, and I understand that too, so I don't know what I would do in that situation.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Lake.
Well, as a judge, you really can't comment on factual situations, but it doesn't really, it doesn't sound like that big a deal to me. As far as punishing, some veterans in wheelchairs, that sounds kind of silly to me.
I like that nice short answer. Okay, Mr. Hardy.
Should I just say yes?
You have a minute. You have a minute.
There are a few issues there, as my colleagues pointed out. I do have to say that I do believe in the First Amendment, the freedom of speech. The particular facts of a certain case we can't comment on but I do believe in freedom of speech, and as that's been interpreted by the United States Supreme Court, often you'll hear speech, and most people think that just means words, but that's been interpreted very broadly and would likely apply in that situation.
Okay, thank you. Stuart?
While we're on the topic of free speech, I would like for each of you to briefly talk a little bit about the case that occurred not too long ago. It certainly affects elections, Citizen United. I'd like to know what you think of it. It's already been decided, so I would imagine there's no problem at this point for anyone to comment on it, and how you see it affecting your candidacy.
Well, we'll start with Tony. I guess he started already, so.
Yeah, now, could you explain to me what you're talking about? I'm sorry.
Citizens United was a U.S. Supreme Court case that had to do with the giving of political monies by corporations and non-people, basically, to campaigns.
Right. Well, I'm sorry, I haven't heard much about that, but the bottom line is, as a judge, we got to follow the law. So, and I want to talk about factual issues, and honestly, I really don't know that much about it, but.
Okay.
I'm somewhat familiar with the case, although it's been quite a while since I read it. Yeah, like you pointed out, it goes directly to freedom of speech. As Mr. Leiker pointed out, as district court, or for a broader term, trial court judges is what we're running for. We are duty bound to follow the law, and the Citizens United opinion is currently the law of our United States Supreme Court, and as a judge, I would follow that law.
Yeah, at a trial court level, if I had a decision that went one direction and the judge in the department next to me had a decision that went a different direction on the same kinds of facts, and still a third decision came up where they took a third point of view, each of the trial court judges would have the right to advocate their point of view, but their view would not be binding on any other trial court judge because they're all at the same level. Once the Nevada Supreme Court decides, that becomes the law of the state of Nevada. When the United States Supreme Court decides, they call that the supreme law of the land. And that simply means you have nobody else to appeal it to. That's as high as it goes. So even if you were very dissatisfied with the outcome of a United States Supreme Court decision, and there are people who obviously will be dissatisfied with a Supreme Court decision because, and I'm not talking about just this one in particular, but if you're dissatisfied with it, that's it. You have to accept that as the supreme law.
Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry. Keep us on time.
All right, we'll start with Joe Hardy and then go Tony and Jim. What are your thoughts on the privatization of prisons? Because keeping in mind, that means that you're paying per diem when they go to that facility.
That to me is more of an issue for our state legislature. As judges, it's not our job, so to speak, to enact policy decisions like that one. If the state legislature passes something like that, or if they don't, that's really up to them. It's not, as a trial court judge, it's not up to us to create policy like that.
Yeah, and I agree with Mr. Hardy. It's more of a legislative decision made, and then also the citizens would decide who to vote for to put in there. I think just a little aside, I've heard some things bad about privatization, but like I said, it really doesn't have to do with us. But also, I would also like to point out that Judge Bixler, this is his seat, he's retiring, so one of us or the other gentleman that's in the race is going to replace him. And it's half criminal. Right now it's half criminal, so it should stay the same. Half criminal, it's half civil. And, you know, I am the only, in my opinion, from what I've heard anyway, may be wrong, I'm the only former prosecutor in the race. I was a prosecutor for about 5 years. So basically we would be deciding like the felony and gross misdemeanor type cases, the misdemeanor cases, you know, domestic violence, DUIs, they would go down in the municipal court or justice court, the lower level, but if they came up on appeal, we would also hear them. So we would have a lot to say as who's going to go to prison, and so that in a way that it is related there, but for whatever it's worth.
Great, thank you.
We are allowed to have our personal opinions about whether we think privatization or government should handle prisons or military or whatever. We are not, however, allowed to express them. The judicial canons of ethics say that if you are a judge or even a judicial candidate, you are not allowed to advocate a partisan point of view.
Okay, well, thank you. Before we go on, I've been informed that we have Mark Stevens here from Henderson Municipal Court. So thank you for coming. Great. Okay, next up is Patrick, and if you again follow the format of directing your question and who you want to answer first. Hopefully we're getting a sufficient mix and the panelists of the candidates feel comfortable with that.
Very good, very good. I'll start with Mr. Leiker, then Mr. Hardy, and Mr. Crockett. It's established that all three of you are registered voters. So when you go to the polls, what is it you look for in the candidates, whether it's for state assembly, local school board, or at a national level?
Well, I think, at least for district court, it's important that you have a judge that's compassionate, it's fair, and it's a hard worker. And I think on one of the sheets when we interviewed in front of the unions, I put, I said, what's the three most important things? And I said, hard work, hard work, hard work. And I know we got a lot of good judges now, including the judges with us today. And but there, we have one candidate, but actually one judge that had, I think, over 50%. This year they didn't show up to work. I think it cost the taxpayers $1,200 per day. So you definitely don't want somebody lazy, and I know I'm not lazy.
Very good.
I think your question was a little different, but what I would answer is I look at a person's resume, record, experience, what their views on things are. For example, for me, my resume's online. You can look at that. You can look at my webpage. You can look at my Facebook page. You can Google me. You can, So I think it's very important that people, and this is what I do, is I look into the candidate. I prefer that people, if they don't have knowledge, it's not a good thing to be voting for someone that you know nothing about.
Thank you.
Which is a big problem for judges, because your question asked, I thought, what do we look for when we go into the ballot box and see different candidates for different offices? And I can tell you that I always look for honesty, integrity, fairness, intelligence, and work ethic. But you can't always find that out about people. And I think that the public, unfortunately, is least informed about judicial candidates compared to all other races. We understand that. And so we work hard to let you know who we are. I have a website too, jimcrockett.net, where my biographical information, honors and awards, resume, things like that are available to you. But it's a shame that we put the onus on you to say, here's my card, here's my website, please, feel free to check me out. But that's kind of where we're at in terms of the dissemination of information.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Well, again, I want to thank everyone for keeping it very brief and to the point. We're getting a lot of good information, and with that, I'll ask Robert to ask his question.
To the point that Mr. Crockett said, the reason we're doing this, the reason we ask these questions, is to find out what you really think about things and whether we want to support you or not. So it's really important that people be honest and actually answer the questions. I'm not specifically to anyone here, but just in general, And so even if you can't make a rule, answer based on a specific rule or a case, we just want your general philosophy. So with that said, there's currently obviously a huge issue with privacy right now in our country with the discovery of the NSA and the invasion and mass sweep of data, our emails, phone calls. Where do you come down on the Fourth Amendment? Does the government have the right to use that kind of power to mass sweep our data? And there are, by the way, 2 federal judges who've ruled differently on that issue, so it is going to the Supreme Court. I don't think it's going to affect your level
I
of
need you to
judge.
ask your question.
Just answer.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
I'll take it on.
Okay, then we'll just keep it rotating around, if that's okay.
Okay. It could very well come before us on a Fourth Amendment search and seizure issue on a criminal case, no question about that. But I can tell you that every case is going to be fact-driven. There are going to be times when what the police did or what the government did is going to infringe on privacy improperly and unconstitutionally, in which case their search is going to be struck down and their practice will be declared unconstitutional, illegal. There will also be times when it will be found to be constitutional and permissible. But it's impossible to be able to give you a definitive answer that would cover every conceivable situation. That's what the legislature tries to do when they pass laws, and it's impossible to pass one law that really covers every conceivable
That wasn't
situation.
my question. My question was, do you support the NSA spying program? Do you think it's constitutional or not? That's my question.
Okay, well, I didn't understand that to be your question. And the answer is, I don't know, because I don't know any more about it than when I read the newspaper.
Okay, Mr. Liker.
We have a Black Hawk Down, we have a Black Hawk Down. I was gonna wait to get that in, but I couldn't fit it in. But that's one of my favorite movies, and I just, the part where the Rangers go down there and they save those people, I think that's really admirable. So it kind of fits with my answer here, but I think privacy rights are very important. I think that's why, we have, the armed services to protect our rights. So, I can't tell you how it would rule. I mean, that is, like Mr. Crockett said, it'd be improper and unethical, but, privacy rights are very important and they're founded in the Constitution. So I can't tell you how it would rule, but that's definitely important. But, we also, we're talking if it affects criminal cases, I think it's important, very important to be tough on crime. I mean, if that's what the law provides for. I mean, we can't let, criminals go around raping people and killing people. And my last shameless plug for myself here is, if your daughter was accused of murder or rape, or she was the victim of it, wouldn't you want somebody on the bench that was, I'm a criminal defense attorney as well, but I was a prosecutor, I was a deputy DA, and I think that's important to point out.
Thank you. All the panel, I'm sorry, we have Mr. Hardy, I'm sorry.
No, that's
Go ahead.
that's okay.
I can't count for 3 here.
No, that's to echo my colleagues' remarks, we can't offer opinion on what we would do if that issue came before us. I have followed that. I've read about it, in the newspapers, online, etc. It's a very troubling issue to me. I again can't say how I would rule if that came before me, but the Constitution's paramount, and if something's running into that, there's a problem.
Okay, thank you. Did all the panelists ask a question? Did you want to ask a question, or? No. Okay. Well, then that brings us to we're right on time, roughly 1:14, and I wish to thank the candidates for Department 24. And thank you, panelists, for really keeping